to see
it.
everyone.
Welcome. For
Welcome.
the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, right. I mean, we're practically experts at this point. We could be emceeing events. So I see we got several of you joining us today. Welcome. Please, in the chat, tell us where you're from. We're going to, of course, ask what you do and all this other fun stuff for those of you that have joined us in the past. Really excited to be here with my colleague, Sarah. Sarah, how's your week going? I mean, it's only Tuesday, but it sounds like you've had a very busy week so far.
Yeah, I actually have been very much involved in a lot of customer conversations these last 2 days. And I actually have one coming up in just an hour after our session today.
Nice.
So it's been a pretty busy week, but very productive. We've been talking about a lot of GitHub tooling and capabilities and really talking through what is the strategy for long-term usage of our components for that customer. So if you guys are interested, if anybody's interested from those types of conversations, we are more than willing to have them. Feel free to book a meeting with us. Our teams, our product managers, our solutions engineer, our specialists, our field services folks are all phenomenal in explaining what is the value for all the different tooling that we provide. And that's what we're here for anyway. So feel free to ping us.
And it's one of those things that the team here is really focused on supporting folks like yourselves who have joined us today to help you really get an experience of this. So if you want to try it out, if you want to see any of the stuff that we talk about today practically and make use of it, a lot of it's available in open source. Again, we're home of open source, so we like to make sure that those developers that are out there can make use of code scanning, secret scanning, and other tools that we have. But if you're a company, you want to use this on your internal repositories, book a meeting with us, see if we can set up a demonstration with you. And then if you want to try it out, you certainly can. That being said, we're 2 minutes in, so let's go ahead and share the screen here for the slides, and we can just kick things off. So here we go. All right, you should be seeing the last of these sessions on how to ship more secure software. I am, of course, one of your two hosts, Keith Hoodlett. I'm a code scanning architect here at GitHub. I've been here just shy of a year. Coming up next month, I'll have been here for 365 days. Sarah, you've been here a lot longer than I have in terms of you've seen some things, I'm sure, as well. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm Sarah Khalife. So happy to have you here today. I'm a principal solutions engineer here at GitHub. I've been here for 3 years, Keith. Time flew by, but it has been a phenomenal time. So I'm very happy to be here and so excited to be talking to everybody on the call today. As Keith said before that, I have seen some things. I was a software engineer in a cloud environment with cloud applications, microservices, Kubernetes, whatever cloud encompassed over the last 4 to 5 years. I was doing that as my previous role. So if you have any questions around how to use advanced security in terms of your container-based environments, I'll actually be doing a talk at KubeCon next week. So it's coming up.
Yeah, right. It's super excited. KubeCon is such an awesome conference, and I'm pseudo jealous, but also I'm rooting for you, and I'm so excited for you. That's awesome.
You should just fly on up, Keith. You're not too far. It's in Detroit, so it's not too far away from you.
Yeah, it's like maybe a few hours flight.
Yeah.
Anyway, we digress. Also, I'm Keith Hoodlett. I come from a background in security, former top 100 security researcher on the Bug Crowd platform, built the DevSecOps program at Thermo Fisher Scientific before I came here. So I've had a lot of fun in the industry so far. And I love having these conversations as well, Sarah, especially when we bring people with a development background and security people together. Good things happen as a result.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. So we've had a lovely 3 weeks with every audience that has participated in the last couple of sessions, but we did cover Introduction to Developer First Security on October 4th. We covered Code Scanning Essentials on October 13th. So over the last 2 weeks. And today we're covering the benefits of secret scanning and the security overview. If you were not able to attend our previous sessions, we do have recordings that we could share with you. If you're interested in hearing more about what is developer first security and what does that really mean, if you want to cover some of the code scanning essentials a little more in-depthly, again, book a meeting with us. Today, we'll be covering a lot of the secret scanning security overview. And if you have any comments, if you used the tool before, if you want to dive a little bit deeper, or if you have any ideas of things to talk about and you find that, this knowledge is important to share, feel free to also raise your hands. So if we can go over to the next slide, Keith. You can click a button that says raise your hand and you can come live on camera with us. We'll we are very much welcoming open conversations here. We want to share whatever the knowledge is from this room. We want to understand what your experiences are. We want to understand where you're coming from and how you're seeing security today. So please raise your hand, share comments in the chats. We'll have a lot of polls and questions coming through, so we can always pull you up and you can have a live conversation, or you can also feel free to post comments in the chat and have the conversation through there.
And Alex actually just went ahead and posted the YouTube links to the first 2 sessions as well in the chat. So if you missed those for some reason, it's Sarah and I as well. You can definitely go back and see the excitement that we bring to the conversation for some of those things. So we have our first poll, which is, if you do not use secret scanning tooling, do you think your organization has any leaked secrets? So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to stop sharing the slides here and go ahead and share the poll results. It would be interesting if people said, we have absolutely none, but then again, maybe they've done a really good job of this, right? Like maybe they've got a secrets management platform. Really curious to get your take on this. I think there was actually just this past week, several issues with hardware firewall solutions that were having things like hard-coded credentials in them and other sorts of interesting vulnerabilities. And it was just sort of like, oh gosh, these things are on the edge of people's networks. Like, this is bad. Yep. So I see a couple of people have answered no. I'm really curious to get your take on this as well. If you'd like to join us on camera, just please raise hand. We'd love to understand, what's your secret, and not like literally the secrets that you're using. What's like your secret to like ensuring that you don't have secrets in your code? Because especially if you're not using a secret scanning solution, it would be nice to know, like, how have you accomplished that? I'd love to hear that. Many of you have said yes, you believe that you have secrets in your code. Likewise, would love to get your take as well. If you want to join us on camera, we'd love to understand, what sort of things maybe you've discovered. And if you don't want to share specifics, that's okay. We'd love to still hear from you in terms of that experience so far. So again, just click raise hand. You can join us on camera, and we'd love to just understand what's going on in your world and the experiences that you've had. Sarah, one of the things that I've seen is, a lot of people, when they see secret scanning, and we'll get into this, they sort of expect it to find the default credential, username, password, or admin password 123 in their code. Not how we work out of the box. No. But I think people will be really interested to see what we do cover. And then, of course, when we get to the demo, those custom secret patterns as well. Right. People are probably like, what do you mean? So
exactly. We'll be showing all of that in a live demo. This time, hopefully my screen will share. I've tested it, so Keith doesn't have to share for me, but we can walk through it live and actually walk through some of the secrets that we're able to detect and how you can create your custom secrets that are specific to your scenarios, to your company, to your organization.
Cool. We do have one more poll as well, so I'm going to stop sharing that poll. And I'm actually going to go ahead and open up the next poll, which I'm just going to briefly share screen so people can see what that poll is. Let's see here. Here we are, and boom. So that next poll that we have is, if you use a secret scanning tooling in general, how many secrets were found within your organization when you enabled it? I'm really curious to see this one because some of the tools out there can also be really, really noisy, right? Like it sort of, you turn it on, you just get absolutely dumped on in terms of the secrets that you find. And then everybody's like, well, I'm not going to be able to fix all this stuff, so why are we even bothering? So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that and then share the results out as well. So far, we have one vote in. So by all means, please vote. Let us know sort of your experience so far with secret scanning. Again, if you'd like to join us on camera, just please raise your hand. For those that have the 1 to 10 secrets, I'd love to understand, especially for that person that has voted so far, what's your secret there as well? Is it just a smaller repository, really good management or your training around secrets management platforms? Yep. Sarah, what are some of the tips that you have in terms of coding well so you don't have secrets in your code?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So in my previous role, what we did is we just stored our configuration files with all of our secrets in our GitHub repos. That was definitely not a best practice at all. But at that point, we're in early stage development. We really didn't care. Nothing was going to production just yet. And most of those secrets, even though we're labeled as prod, it wasn't a publicly available product at that point. But nonetheless, it's still a secret that can be exploited and therefore can be very vulnerable. So what we actually started doing is using a vault type of technology. There's HashiCorp Vault, there's Azure Secret Store, there's many other types of technologies associated to the different clouds, but also individual components like HashiCorp's Vault. So we started using HashiCorp Vault at that point, and we were able to clean up our secrets really fast. But at the same time, we didn't really think about this at that point, and I didn't really know any better. But our secrets, once you remove them from the repository, they're still exploited in your Git history. So what do we do? How can we really detect that? That was something that we lacked. And we had like a full-blown audit team to come in and do validations manually. It was not an automated process. It was not something that was easily detectable.
Yeah, and that is the one thing that I think oftentimes catches people off guard is they're sort of like well, we removed it from the main branch, so we're good, right? And it's like, yeah, if you first of all haven't rotated the secret, secondly, like it's now in all branches and all history that's associated with that checkout.
Exactly.
So every developer that's now checking in a feature branch in 10 minutes still has that secret in their code base, right? And so the cleanup is such a challenge here. We've only had 3 votes. I mean, I think that that's maybe less than 10% of the people attending. Anybody else want to weigh in, right? We'd love to, again, we're not going to know who voted for what here, so you can share sort of freely, but I'd love to get any of the 3 that have voted so far. Especially, for those people that have like the 1 to 10 or the 1,000 plus, like, what was your experience when you found them? I'd love to get a take on, how did you react as sort of an organization to that? Was it, hey, this is really good, or oh gosh, like we need to stop everything and go fix this? I'd love to sort of see what people's experience here, because I know when I was working at Thermo Fisher, we expected some technical debt, right? Like I think as any company does when you introduce new security solutions, you sort of have this don't panic, experience when you see things.
Yep.
But at the same time, you'll get leadership, you'll get sometimes architects who will see something and say the sky is falling. It's like let's check on this. Like let's be sure that the sky is falling before we panic, and have everybody come in and solve this. So
was there ever any friction when you were detecting secrets on resolving them in your previous role?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Like the amount of time that we have seen just development teams that didn't really understand how to use like CyberArk Conjure, HashiCorp Vault, or other vaulting type solutions. There was a lot of friction there because we were sort of finding a problem and we weren't really presenting a solution. And that is one of the things that I often come back to as just like a security professional. The best thing that you can do before you ever turn on a solution like this is go find the solution to that problem and make sure you have like a SharePoint page or a wiki or something that documents like what that is, how to use it, make sure you have enough licenses to give people access. Because if you don't, you're just being an ambulance driver or an ambulance chaser, and you're not doing your company a service by just like throwing problems at them. Like you sort of have to say, here's how you can fix this. And so when we turn this on, please be aware and go fix this. I'll also give a shout out to one other person that I worked there that I could not have done all of the things that we did without. And her name is Tess McCarthy Bogle. And Tess, her role specifically was on communicating, and here I'll stop sharing the poll here, but her role specifically was on communicating when we were delivering all of these different solutions, like to make sure people knew in advance.
We have somebody who raised their hand, Keith.
Hey, great. It looks like Alyssa may have wished to join us. I'll bring Alyssa on camera with us. Alyssa, tell us about your experience in this. First of all, if you care to share, were you on the higher end or the lower end of sort of your secrets experience? And what was that like when you saw them?
Yeah, so we are on the higher end, and kind of echoing what Sarah said, we did a large migration. So there were a lot of secrets in Git history that were left over from before we even had our secrets management solution in place. So we do have all the pieces in place for people to do it right, but there are a lot of secrets out there that are old and most likely expired.
Hopefully expired.
Yeah, we're looking at doing some automation to kind of, I think a lot of them are probably one particular type of secret that we can automate and validate, and then hopefully close those out on behalf of developers and clear up some of the noise from our migration, because I think that that's been the biggest problem. It is shocking to see how many secrets there are, but we kind of take it with a grain of salt because we know there is a lot of old stuff in there. So, but you know, we are concerned because we do still see new things being put in there every day. So that's really where I think the most value is at this point, is like what's still happening now as opposed to what's left over from the migration.
Yeah, and oftentimes I kind of come back to like shutting the doors and locking them before you clean the house is sometimes the best thing that you can do, because then you don't have like, you know, the dog running with mud on its paws in and out. So it's like, let's get this place clean. And so Alyssa, it sounds like you're coming from a security role perspective. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'm kind of in between the developer and the security role. I'm trying to bridge that gap, and we're trying to make that better for our developers and try to help everybody work together better.
Nice, nice.
Great.
Maybe, Sarah, what we can do is when we get to the demo section, we can also share one of the tools we like to use for repo cleanup called BFG. I can definitely share a link for that as well. But Alyssa, would love to get, is there any like tooling that you use for like history cleanup that you'd recommend, or anything that you've seen so far that you're sort of looking into? And if not, no pressure, we'll have recommendations.
Yeah, we haven't gotten that far, so I'd be interested in recommendations.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Alyssa, thanks for joining us on camera. Feel free to come back on later if you see things that you have questions about as well. So for now, we'll drop you off camera, but thank you. And
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, it's very traditional experience in terms of, you know, security or security adjacent personnel turn on these solutions, and like suddenly it's like, oh, so.
And also, what do you do now? I think that's the next step. Identifying is one thing, remediating is the other. And if you don't know, as a developer, if you don't really understand, like, how do you revoke the secret? Do you even own the secret, or is it somebody, or did somebody else create that secret for you and provide it to you as, you know, whoever's managing maybe your Azure instance or your AWS instance? I think that's the tougher part sometimes. And having a role like Alyssa's role, that sounds great, because I think you need that bridge. You need to create a bridge between the two sides, the security side and the developer side. And that bridge isn't always as easy as having somebody there that you can talk to that can help figure that out. Sometimes it's on the developer, sometimes it's on the security researcher. So we want to make sure that at least the information is there to make it easy for any developer or any security researcher to jump in and have that open conversation.
So I do have a question as well for the audience. I'm going to go ahead and share this here. It's not a poll, so we are asking folks to raise hand if they'd like to weigh in on this. So please raise your hand if you want to join us on camera. But the question that I have for the room is, you know, what sort of data do you need access to at the macro level to help you make your job easier, right? Especially from a developer perspective, from a security perspective. Would love to get your take on that. And again, also, if you're a little shy, maybe you're eating something or you're just getting ready for the day and you've joined us, by all means, feel free to answer in the chat as well. Sarah and I could talk all day about this sort of thing, I'm sure, but we don't want to be talking all day. We'd love to hear your voices. So please raise your hand. But I, you know, for me as a security professional, I think the biggest things that I needed was sort of what repos are these things in and what keys are possibly exposed. And I have like my burn down list. What are my AWS secret keys? What are my Azure secret keys? What are my database keys? Those are all things that I focused on. Sarah, from a developer perspective, what were sort of the things that you would focus on from what data did you need to make informed decisions about the secrets you were dealing with?
That's a great question. I actually, when I was a developer, I didn't know what type of data I needed because I didn't really realize that this is a security vulnerability right off the bat. I don't think it was clear enough for me to understand, like, yeah, I understand plain text secrets, definitely can't put them there in a plain text repository that anybody can access. But for us, our repositories were still private. So in my mind, at that point, that's not necessarily a security risk to an extent. But at the end of the day, I don't control who's part of those repositories. Even though they're private, I'm not the owner. I don't really know who's coming in and out. We might have different people accidentally adding others. You never know from the access management side of things because we didn't necessarily own it. The enterprise did. Assuming the enterprise did it securely, maybe those secrets would have been fine. But again, GitHub's repository is not a place to do a secret store. There's no automation, there's no prevention, there's no rotation, there's no prevention if something has been exposed on the GitHub side because we don't own the secrets and we don't maintain them. We're just
We had to be really sort of thoughtful about that as well at Thermo Fisher in terms of the contracted developers that we were bringing in to work on very specific projects, right? Like those folks were outside resources that had access to the version history and the code for certain repositories. And so even just the setup of how we were using internal for inner source versus private repositories, team associations, sort of arrangements of working, and then determining from there, like, okay, what secrets are possibly exposed in given repositories and what users are part of that as well. And that was something from a security perspective that we had to care about was what do we actually see from a user perspective, not just like a how many secrets, what secrets, but also like who has access and for how
Yes.
long. One of the common things that you hear as well is like a person moves into a new role and it was the manager's responsibility to make sure that that individual who has left their team no longer had access to all of the things inside the company that they previously had access to that were not relevant to their new role. Again, things to think about, right? Things to manage. So if anyone in the audience has an opinion on this, please raise your hand. We'd love to hear sort of your take on this. What are some of the things that you look for? What are the things that you care about when you're thinking about secrets in your code?
Yeah. And I was actually wondering, are there teams out there that have sort of secret management training? Because that's not something necessarily that we focused on at all. Even when we did our security training, we focused on vulnerabilities that were coming into our code base, not necessarily tokens and API tokens and secrets and passwords that can be easily exposed. Even though honestly, it is coming back to like, hey, somebody has my password. I know from a common sense perspective that that is not secure. But at the end of the day, it's not necessarily storing configuration files is not necessarily a thing that is uncommon. It's
Right.
very common. So when you store configuration files for you to easily deploy in your cloud environment, you might have some test passwords or API tokens stored in those config files, and you might not even realize that you're uploading it into GitHub. So probably half the time it's an honest mistake.
And sometimes as well, you'll see, I mean, really crazy things like .git folders that are stored on web applications. I'll tell you, as a bug bounty hunter, that was one of the things I looked for. Is I looked for that .git folder because if I could find it, sometimes you'd find configuration files with credentials in there, and sometimes they'd work. Yeah. And so again, like they were migrating their code by literally just git cloning on the web server. And I was like, ooh. Like yikes! Like don't do that. Migrate your code in a much safer way. Anyway, I could go on and on about that. So let's get into this a little bit, Sarah. In terms of benefits of secret scanning and security overview, right? Like as customers, what do you get by having this? So first, let's set the problem and sort of give an appropriate context here. We see on open source a 50% compound annual growth rate of secrets leaked daily. We have, I think, hundreds at this point that we see. The nice thing is, again, as part of the open source ecosystem, we make secret scanning available to the open source developers out there. So again, they have the tools to be able to work with this and to manage this. We even have partnerships with folks like Amazon, who, when a key is leaked for an Amazon S3 bucket or an Amazon secret key is leaked on a public repository, Amazon actually automatically rotates that secret so that it doesn't get hacked. Again, benefits of working as part of a platform, working with partners. There's a lot of value here. But as I think you could expect, Sarah, with more code comes more problems. And this is just one of them.
More code, more problems.
So, well, potentially, right? Like hopefully not. And hopefully we can help you fix that.
Yeah. I just wanted to point out that's the goal too. We didn't necessarily have the concepts of shift and left in this conversation as much, but it's still the same concept. We need to shift left, not only for code scanning, not only just talking about vulnerabilities within your code base, but other types of exploits such as secrets and API tokens.
Yeah, absolutely. And here, we have an example of catching those things, what it would look like in the ecosystem. You'll go through this in the demo as well in terms of where these are found. The nice thing that I really like about the interface, and I don't know if your demonstration will have this, but one of the things that I think a lot of tools do poorly is they'll give you 1,000 findings if you have one secret in 1,000 places. It's not what we do. We show you that you have a secret, and we show you all the places that secret is located, but it's just one finding, right? Like, granted, it's one secret that you need to go rotate. It's 1,000 places that you need to clean it up in your history and your code base. But at least from that concept or that perspective, we're not flooding people with findings, which I think is a really big problem that security teams run into, is they tend to overwhelm their developers with just hundreds or thousands of findings, and that's just not productive in today's day and age. So keeping moving here, though, if I just click on that screen, an example of some of our partners that we work with, again, out of the box, we work with our secret scanning partners to find keys associated or secrets associated with their services. And there are tons of them. So one of the things I think would be great for you to show during your demo, Sarah, would be just that page where people can go to, and we can link it in the chat, that shows, if you're on enterprise server, you can look up by your version. If you're on enterprise cloud, it's everybody out there from our partners' perspective. In terms of just who we partner with, but there are tons. And the reason that we focus on these, I think, first as a first-class citizen to this problem is if these things leak, that's where, well, leaked S3 buckets come in, criminals go and steal things, or maybe they start running crypto mining operations on your cloud environment, which can be really expensive. Again, all reasons why these are some of the most important secrets to go ahead and detect inside of your code base. Go ahead, Sarah. I don't know if you had something to add there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just posted the link on the secret scanning partners that we work with. I wanted to also plug in that it's not just a partner vendor kind of association. We are actually partners. We work not only with the community to bring in these partners, but we help at least most of our partners to really think through, hey, how should we internally be managing our API tokens? So we actually created some standards and promoted those standards. What we could do is follow up with a blog of how we've talked about what GitHub did to change their tokens and to promote that standard across the board, across the other vendors and partners that we work with in our ecosystem.
Yeah, at a high level, effectively, we tagged or gave provenance to the way that we generate our tokens. And then we started encouraging this partner network to do the same, which has made detection on our part a lot better. But it's also allowed customers, when they see a secret leaked, they know exactly where it is and where it goes to, which is super helpful for remediation. And of course, one of the things as well that a lot of people ask for is, well, what do you mean? I want to find admin password 123. Well, you can. We do have this concept of custom regex patterns or custom regular expressions. This is something that allows you to go ahead and include your own in-house sort of self-created secrets or tokens as detection mechanisms in your environment. The nice thing is we do have an open source repository that I'll go ahead and find a link to, and I'll drop it in when you're demoing, Sarah, for a bunch of the things that us and the field security team have created for custom regex patterns that people can just go out and grab. It's open source. We've made them available as additional things that you might want to add to your ecosystem, depending on what industry you work in. The other thing that's super important to mention here is you can test your patterns before you release them. So we do have this dry runs concept where you can actually say, you know what, I've created a pattern. I want to see if I can detect on this. And then you realize, oh, wait a minute. Like I've created a pattern that detects way more things than I wanted to. So you can go ahead and refine that before you release it out to your environment. So that way you're not alerting developers on a bunch of secrets that aren't really secrets. Like the regular expression pattern you used wasn't great. Sarah, do you have any, there's a site that I have that I like to use for creating regex patterns. Do you have any that you recommend or that you go back to? Like if you had to write a regex that I learned it in university, but it never stuck. I don't know if you have any tips on writing regex.
I don't have some tips of writing regex. So I would also love to have the repository that you shared with the open source community here or just open source your tooling on what type of regexes you use. Yeah. The main type of regex I see very commonly used is RSA tokens and RSA keys. Mm-hmm. That is a very common one that I've seen that has been used across a lot of our customers. Many people have their own certificate authority, so there are different types of formats and different types of things that they want to look for. So they love using the custom secrets capability just to be able to detect something like that. We also have a lot of customers that create even our vendors, our partners are also our customers. So that's another component. Like they can also go through and detect their own secrets that are a little more customized for their enterprise with custom secret scanning, just because they have the ability to understand what type of regexes they need to write out, how they want to plan them, and what they really want to look for. But the dry run capability has saved a lot of my customers from definitely flooding a lot of their developers with inconsistent results.
And the one that I often go back to is for me, if I'm writing a regex, it's regex101.com. My recommendation is don't put anything in there as an example when you're doing your regex writing that might be a real secret, because again, it's a free service. Who knows what they're logging and how they're logging it? So I love to go there though if I put in some fake data or some like manipulated data, and then I write my regexes. And yeah, the one to focus on here for the format we use is PCRE, or Perl Compliant Regular Expressions. So if you're going out and writing any regex 101, just make sure you're using that format. With that, we do have a poll. So do you think secret scanning tools are as important as other security tooling in a modern developer lifecycle? I'm really curious to get this take, because some people are going to say, no, like static analysis is the jam and that's what you should be focusing on. Other people are all about that dynamic analysis tool set, which again, I understand. But I'd love to get people's take on this as well. So let's go ahead and share out that poll here really quick. So
I think Chris from the chat also shared the exact same regex101.com.
Cool. Nice, Chris. Yeah, great tool. My only recommendation is I have no idea what they log, so never put a real secret into that like example box, because there have been a few times that have been like, oh, before I paste this, let me make sure I like open a text file and manipulate this a little bit and then paste it in. But yeah, glad to see that I'm not the only one that likes to use that. I'll tell you what, it saved my bacon when I was in college, having to write regexes for various programs. Like, whew, super necessary. So far we've got 8 votes of people that say absolutely, that secret scanning should be part of their security tooling and a modern development lifecycle. Surprised that we haven't had anyone say no or somewhere in the middle. No people that are disagreeing with us today, which is fine, because I think that's probably why they're here. But I'd love to get anyone's take on if maybe they feel I don't know, conflicted about this. Please raise your hand if you want to join us on camera, because I'd love to get your take on this as well.
And if you think it's important, again, how do you think it will be important to incorporate that as part of the developer experience? That's also what I am curious about. From my own understanding, it's not as easily incorporated. It's usually a third-party tool coming in, being tested with either your CI/CD pipeline, or has kind of like an audit scanner where it just audits and scans once a day or once a week or so forth. So I'm curious on, if you do have secret scanning and you do think it's important as part of the developer lifecycle, how do you see that being incorporated in that developer lifecycle? Please raise your hand.
Yeah.
Would love to talk about that.
It's another great point, right? Is just like, okay, so it's important, but how do you do it, right? Like, how are you doing it today? That's a great question. For the sake of time, because I want to make sure you have plenty of time to demo this, Sarah, I'm going to keep moving here, and I'm just going to go ahead and share for the security overview piece. Now, one thing that I will say about security overview is I work with one of our excellent product managers, whose name is Kelly Arwine. And Kelly is currently working with the engineering team to overhaul the security overview experience. So what you see today is actively changing. I'm expecting sometime around the GitHub Universe timeframe that you'll see a whole new look and feel to this experience. And GitHub Universe is not too far away. I think we're less than 4 weeks away at this point.
Yeah.
So sit tight. There is some important metrics and information here. We'll show it to you today, but there's some really cool stuff coming that I look forward to seeing out in the world. And again, it's going to show you all sorts of interesting information in terms of leaked secrets, in terms of security findings, dependency findings, and what have you. So super valuable. With that, Sarah, I'm going to hand it over to you so that we can go ahead and demonstrate this. And then what I'll do is I'll drop in the chat as well a link to that repo that we use as part of the field team for custom secret patterns that we've developed and helped other companies make use of. So I'll drop that in the chat as well.
Awesome. Let me share my screen here.
Cool. There we go. Although it looks like I'm getting the infinite screen.
Screen inception here. All right. Can everybody see it clearly? See my
you're good.
actual screen clearly? Okay, there we go. So here we have our demo repository. If you were part of our last session, we did a live demo of how you can discover some of your code scanning capabilities. Same security tab. If you weren't here last time, if you haven't noticed, we added a security tab at the top of your GitHub repositories. If you're actively using GitHub today, you'll be able to see that security tab. When you enable advanced security, some of the tools that you'll be able to see are code scanning and secret scanning. You should be able to see Dependabot right off the bat today. With secret scanning, so let's jump into that and focus on that today through this live demo. But with secret scanning, we work with so many of our vendors and partners, as Keith already demonstrated and showed a big screen of some big names there. But in many cases, we could see that these vendors and partners actually create very great regexes for us to understand and discover those vulnerabilities or those exposed secrets within our GitHub repositories. GitHub secret scanning, when enabled, it runs natively. You don't have to run it. You don't have to kick it off from another tool. You don't have to have a Actions workflow or a Jenkins workflow or another CI/CD workflow running. It runs natively within the GitHub ecosystem. So therefore, you get your secrets as soon as we can detect them. In this case, we have already detected 15 open secrets, and we closed about 10 of them. When closing them, there are a couple different things you can do. But let's jump into one of these secrets so you can see what that looks like. So in this case, we have a Stripe API key. We can exactly see where it's exploited. It's right in the README, not the best place to do this. You can even add a comment and associate it back to your commit. You can see the comments from your commit. You can associate it back to that specific change. You can see exactly what's going on in that history. And for the security researchers out there, or even for the developers, you can see exactly the history of the secret specifically. You can see if it was labeled as a false positive. You can see if it won't be fixed, or you can see if it was closed after a couple of days and which days it was closed and when it was reopened. So I think this is a great way to understand what's happening across the audit side of things. So a lot of big enterprise level customers have an audit team that comes and audits repositories, audits organizations, audits the company across the board. So this makes it so much easier to understand what's going on within those secrets and how you're remediating them. Today, if you want to dismiss the alert, you can label it as false positive, used in test, won't fix, or revoked. If you label it, however you label it, you can now also add a dismissal comment. So you can link directly maybe to a GitHub issue or project board or a Jira ticket or ServiceNow ticket, wherever it is where you're maintaining some of that information outside of the GitHub ecosystem or outside of your pull request. You can add a comment, say, hey, here's where here's the information beyond what I just did, beyond this commit. Or you can just add a comment, say, hey, this is false positive because this. So there's just so much more information you can add within this dismissal comment.
So Sarah, when you dismiss this though, and maybe I missed it earlier, that kicks off some sort of alert of some kind, does it not for folks?
That's a great point. Yes. So anything GitHub does has a event associated to it. So when you're detecting a secret and when you're dismissing a secret, and based on what you're dismissing it as, false positive, used in test, revoked, there is an event associated to it. So what you could do is set up a trigger, a webhook, or a GitHub action that is triggered based on this to create a next step. So many of our customers, what they have done is they connected back to GitHub Actions to say, hey, anytime there's a false positive labeled, I want my security team to understand why it's a false positive. So I'm gonna create an action that kicks off on a false positive event, and I can then notify the security team through either a dashboard of sorts or can configure an alerting system through an API call, whatever it is, however your security team works today. You can use that actions automatic trigger to create whatever you need to do as the next step. Keith, I don't know if in your previous role or if in your current role, what are some of the examples you've seen of how people are triaging these results, if they're labeling them as false positive, or if they're labeling them as revoked? What's the next step that you've seen usually most of our customers take?
So one of the things that sort of I would say we saw two things. There was certain teams that were really mature and they would go through a process of first, rotating the secret on the service. Then they would store it in a vault system that we were using. And then they would go and make the update to the code. And then maybe if they still had that alert for that secret in like other, branches of the history, they would just mark it as revoked and then go ahead and flag it and say, revoked on day at time by person. And then now in name of vault system. And that was one way that they would clean it up, is because then they would say like, look, the secret's revoked, and so we don't have to necessarily like go and actually clean the history. We're good. We don't have to like do all of this additional work. And that was one way that I thought was pretty good. I was satisfied with it from a security perspective. Now, would I have liked them to clean the history? Also, yes. But again, there's only so much I could be asking. There were other teams though who would just say, won't fix or false positive, and then I'd go out and I'd validate it. And sometimes what I would do is perhaps it was mean of me, but I would actually then take some of the known vulnerabilities in their application and in our test environment, go ahead and show how I could exploit it and then retrieve that secret inside of that test environment, and encourage them to think about maybe reopening that and addressing it. It was the, trust them to do the right thing. And oftentimes I did because it was important. But also I would say that there were times that there were teams who would abuse that trust, and we'd sort of get them back on track. And eventually we'd sort of, more actively monitor these things for that team over a period of time. And then if their behaviors got better, we'd sort of back away, because scale wise, as security professionals, there were, I don't know, maybe a dozen people on my team at its height and 3,700 plus developers that we were working with. So,
Yep.
one to several hundred. So it is a little bit of both. Trust but verify, leverage sort of your broader security organization with the webhook events into a security incident or event management platform for alerting and monitoring, tracking behavior. There were all sorts of good things that we could do there, but there are certain teams you trusted, and there are other teams that they needed a little bit more hand-holding.
So in many cases, what are some of my bigger customers that have a full-blown security process that they need to follow, they also like creating dashboards. There's the capability to see them in our security overview, and we'll cover that in a few minutes. But what many of our customers have done, they just configure their webhooks, because everything within the security tab here there's a webhook associated to it as well. They can configure their webhooks to hit either like their Splunk integration, their Sentinel, their any type of SIEM that they had. They wanted to configure dashboards there so they can understand how many secrets are being exposed, how many won't be fixed, how many are labeled as false positive, so they can get a good understanding of the bigger picture. And because you can drill down much more easily now, and you don't have to chase teams, you can actually just look into the repository. That makes it so much easier for them, not only to understand what's happening across the board, but be able to dive deeper into the topics that they wanted to. So if they wanted to look through all those won't fixes and go through an analysis of why there won't be fixed, they can at least have a dashboard that they can narrow that down to. They can see the percentages and jump into the repositories or teams that they're working with to remediate these in whatever way they can.
And in some cases, based on the context of the application itself, like won't fix is an entirely acceptable decision. Again,
Yep.
Based on context, right? I'd love to hear, if anyone in our audience has strong opinions about this as well, please just raise your hand. We'd love to understand sort of your take on this. If there are ways that you found are successful or maybe unsuccessful in addressing this, we'd love to chat with some of you as well about that experience. So please raise your hand. We'd love to have you on camera with us. Likewise, I know Dunya just posted in the chat as well. If you want to have an in-depth conversation, perhaps not on camera with us, or at least not in this setting, and talk a little bit more about this and try this yourself in your organization, by all means, please just book a meeting with us. It's just a button right at the top. I will tell you, and you've probably had this experience as well, Sarah, the number of times that I have sat down with customers in a proof of concept kickoff. They turn on secret scanning, they go to their most important repository in their organization, and 5, maybe 7 minutes later, suddenly they have to leave because they have to go run incident response. Like, I've seen it so many times.
Yeah, some customers expected to have some secrets exposed, but I don't think all of them expected to have as many. What GitHub does really well is not only scan your current state, but it also scans for your Git history. So I think to the point that we are talking about earlier, Alyssa, you don't have to worry about discovering the Git history aspect of it by yourself. When you enable secret scanning, it will do that for you. So it will tell you specifically, hey, this is not only in this in this current state of the repository, but it was actually in this commit. So in this commit, you can see that was part of many other tags or products that, however you want to label your deployments, your releases. It was part of many releases in many of the ecosystems that they deploy to. So what they ended up doing, a lot of my customers have, or some of my customers have, just quickly revoked that secret and then had to redeploy within that day or within those couple of days, just to make sure that any of the exposed credentials weren't just being pushed out to a public web interface.
So with that being said as well, like you probably have more to show on like the close side, but do you also have something to show for some of the push protection functionality? Because I think that is like, that's just changing the game at this point.
Yes. So just really quickly, I wanted to show that even though things are labeled as closed, they don't just disappear. If something's labeled as false positive, it doesn't go away. So I think a lot of the security researchers or security analysts that we work with are worried, like, hey, why are they labeling it as that? And then we're not seeing it anymore. But it's not, it's still there. So you can actually detect exactly when it was closed, when it was labeled, how it was closed, if it was labeled as false positive, and so forth. So again, back to the audit capability, which is, I think, very important for a lot of our customers. But yes, so this is reactive. How do we become more proactive? That is one of the biggest changes that has, I would say, been, like you said, a game changer in this world. So let me go into my settings here. And under my settings, there's a code security analysis section. Under the code security analysis section, this is within the repository, there are a couple different things you can see. You can enable a lot of the security tooling that we were talking about the last 3 weeks. Here's where you can create your custom patterns of what we've been discussing earlier on. So you can define up to 100 custom patterns for this repository. A couple of them you could see here, somebody labeled social security numbers, but they're unpublished yet. So they're still doing some dry runs, maybe some configuration. But then we also have our published PGP, private keys, and RSA keys. So those are the patterns that we're currently looking for. But you can create new patterns, label them as published or not published just yet, or you can even sort them, because we have that capability. If you have 100 patterns, it's a lot. The greatest, most proactive thing that we've come up with lately, over the last, I guess it's been like 6 months, if not longer, that we've
I think April of this year or something like that.
That's, yeah, it feels like a new feature, but in reality, a lot of my customers have started using it right off the bat. Push protection blocks any pushes that are coming into your GitHub ecosystem. If it's on server, if it's on cloud, you can enable push protection. So it doesn't allow those high fidelity credentials that we're looking for, or high fidelity API tokens that we're looking for, to enter into your Git history in your cloud environments or in your server environments. With this, it becomes a lot more proactive. So you can actually enforce a more set of security rules that did not necessarily exist before. Because with push protection, I feel like it's, again, a game changer for our customers, but it's a big conversation, especially for those migrating repositories. This has been the #1 tool that we've enabled when we were migrating repositories from one tool to GitHub, because they make sure that any repository that's coming in is coming with a clean slate.
The thing that I really liked about it is it's a pre-receive hook, right? And so in terms of being able to do this at scale, the only place that you can really do secret protection is on the version control system, because otherwise, if you're doing it as an IDE integration or as an agent sitting on the box, like, your developers aren't all going to use the same IDE, or that they probably have admin on their system and they're just going to turn off that agent because it's slowing down their pushes. And at the end of the day, like, manageability at scale for such a solution is just not feasible. But
yeah,
all commits of code come to your version control system. They come to GitHub. And so this is a really great place. The one thing that I always like to add, though, and this is sort of a thing that I think scares people, but it sort of relieves or alleviates their concern, is if you already have a secret that is exposed as part of the secret scanning detection, Push protection will not block a commit that includes that existing secret that has already been detected. Reason for that is if you are already just, you've already got your code in GitHub, you're just turning this on for the first time, you're not suddenly stopping development productivity by introducing this. It's only for those new secrets that are truly not part of your ecosystem today that is protecting against, which I love. I think it's a great solution.
Yep. Great. So we have about 10 minutes. I just wanted to touch on some of the other topics that we talked about. So you mentioned the BFG repository cleaner. That's one of your favorite tools, as you said, but it is a open source tool that you can leverage today. So you can see it actually how to leverage BFG in the GitHub remove sensitive data section. So how do you go through and clean up some of your Git history? In many cases, what I suggest to a lot of my customers is, hey, you need to revoke that credential. It's exposed. A lot of customers think that by cleaning it in their current Git state, as well as their Git history, that they are good. It's not. That's not the case. Your secret's already exposed. The best case is to revoke it, provide a new secret. And if you can't necessarily alter your Git history information there, it's not necessarily the worst thing as long as the secret is revoked. So I think that's one of the biggest conversations I had with a lot of my customers that have been doing this without secret scanning before, but now it has been so much more relevant and so much more important because they're realizing how many secrets are actually in their Git history. So the first step is to revoke those secrets because they already are exposed.
And for me, it's always, especially as you're thinking of walking into this, yes, you want to definitely detect them. Yes, you need to clean them. Make sure you're writing the documentation on how to use the secrets vaults or other solutions to do this correctly, because nothing worse than finding the problem, forcing revocation, and then leaving them in the dark about how to actually fix the problem, because you're going to slow down a lot of people and that's just going to cause friction.
Exactly. So going back to our security overview. So even though it will be changing in terms of what it looks like today, you're actually already seeing some of the changes in my organization view here. So there are different levels of where you can see the security results. You can see them at the enterprise level. So if you have GitHub Enterprise and you have multiple organizations, you'll be able to see some of your results consolidated across your enterprise from all those orgs at your enterprise level. Here we can see it specifically in our organization. So in this section here, I can actually see all of the information that we saw within our repositories a little more consolidated in one place. We can see how many of our repositories have dependabot enabled and how many are affected, code scanning as well, and secret scanning. So you can see about 29% of our repositories are affected with some of our code scanning alerts. 31% of our repositories have secret scanning alerts, and you can see the repositories here labeled out. Hey, they have about this many alerts per repository for these types of vulnerabilities, such as dependency, code specific, or secret scanning, or secrets token vulnerabilities. What we can do here is actually jump into, we can still continue focus on security scanning specifically today, but at your security overview, you can see exactly all the vulnerabilities that are listed out as a security researcher or as an org owner. So you can see and be able to identify how many times a token or these types of tokens are exposed. So you can see here all of our tokens that are exposed across our organization. There's a security role that allows you to also see this as well. So it's not only for the org admins, and it makes it so much easier to get a consolidated understanding, again, of where these secrets are, what they are, and how you can go on your next steps on revoking them. Working with the developer team, working with the security team, working with this repository, you just have a lot more insight to bridge that gap.
So we did have a question in the chat as well, as if we can see this at the enterprise level or only at the org level. So there is an enterprise level security overview. I don't know that it's going to show the exact same as what you see at the organization overview today, only because the organization security overview is in the active process of being updated. So that being said, there is a security overview functionality inside of the enterprise level. Let me see if I can also get you a good link for it. There you go. So again, there are sort of the experiences here. It's hard for us to demonstrate only because in the cloud environment, we're not GitHub enterprise admins for like github.com. So we'd have to go to like, octodemo.com, which is our GitHub enterprise server instance, and then populate some of that. So Alfredo, great question. And if you'd love to explore that more and talk to us more about that as well, please, by all means, feel free to just book a meeting with us. We'd love to get sort of your needs at the enterprise level, especially if you have a lot of organizations, because I talk with companies that have gone through that path of setting up multiple orgs.
And one last thing I wanted to show is our documentations page, where we label out the different secret patterns that we work with. So Enterprise Cloud, you can see all of the secrets that we're looking for today. But if you are on Enterprise Server and you're in different types of versions, you can actually look into that specific version. So if we go into 3.6, if you're on the latest Enterprise Server version, you can see what tokens we're working with. If there are any other capabilities associated to this secret scanning pattern setup, you can see the differences when you switch between Enterprise Cloud or Enterprise Server, so you can see exactly what is specific to your current environments. And I'll stop sharing here, but we'd love to see if there's any other questions.
Awesome. So we have
components here.
Yeah, we have about 5 minutes. I was going to say, if anyone wants to join us on camera and talk a little bit more about their experience, please, by all means, just raise your hand, as well as, questions or comments in the chat. We'd love to hear those as well. I also want to be very cognizant of time as well, Sarah, because I know that you actually have to run to an enterprise, business meeting here in a moment. So if we have someone that wants to join us, quickly raise your hand. We'd love to have you up on camera. Otherwise, I think I'll just share screens and we'll take us out here in a moment. Importantly, though, before we wrap up, there are a couple of things that I do just want to share briefly. So let me just pull open the right tab here. And a few things. First of all, this has been our third installment, the benefits of secret scanning and security overview. So there are those other 2 installments. We have included those in the chat as direct links for you folks to go and watch those out on YouTube. So by all means, go ahead and check those out. Other really important thing about this, if I could just move ahead on the slide, here we go, is we are going to post a link in the chat. We hold a lot of these, and for both Sarah and myself, we'd love to get your feedback to understand, how did we do? Did we give you information that was useful? Was the conversation engaging? Did we miss something that you felt like you really wanted to see? I think that those are all super important pieces for us to understand, so that as we deliver these things in the future, we make sure that we're giving you the content that you want to hear about, and that, of course, you have an opportunity to engage with us both on camera or in the chat. And as just a reminder as well, book a meeting with us, because you can ask for us specifically if you want to. I know that we both work in this space quite a lot. And granted, depending on the situation, if you're in Europe, you might not get Sarah because she's in California. You might get me because I'm on the US East Coast up in New England. But again, book a meeting with us. We'd love to talk with you more about it. And with that, that has been the How to Ship More Secure Software Learning Journey series. I'm really excited for having had these conversations with you, and I look forward to the next set of them as well, Sarah. Any parting words before we take us out?
Just wanted to one more time plug in GitHub Universe coming in a couple of weeks. We'll have a lot of our security experts. We actually have a security side of conversation. So we'll have our CISOs, our security PMs, our security specialists, similar to Keith, that will be attending in person and will be virtually. So if you are interested and want to hear more sessions, definitely go to GitHub Universe. It's happening in San Francisco. If you are interested in coming in person, please feel free to message our marketing team or our team here, and we can figure out how to get you some more information around that. But at the end of the day, we're all here to have great conversations with a lot of our customers, a lot of our ecosystem. So we are more than happy to have to jump into more meetings. So let's, I think, close it at that end. Feel free to book a meeting with us. I am so happy to have met and talked to so many of you throughout these last 3 weeks, and we are looking forward to continuing these conversations on.
Likewise, Sarah, likewise. Well, with that, everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this How to Ship More Secure Software series. I've been one of your 2 illustrious hosts, gazing or sitting in the light that Sarah shines on all of these topics, which I've really enjoyed. So
it's the glowing background that I have right now.
I just love it. I love it. In the meantime, the 2 things I always like to say when I close these things out: remember to git, commit, and stay cloud.